So, welcome to the Franchise Company First Friday event for June. And our session today is talking about territory mapping and unlocking growth with smarter territory mapping. And our guest, we're delighted to have us this session is Lauren from Smappen, who's one of the companies that we work very closely with. And Lauren is here to talk about territory mapping, talk about the way that it can be done, various options, and look at it from a development point of view in terms of growing your network. So I shall pass over to you, Lauren, to lead us from here and take us through the session. And again, from everyone that's involved, we're looking at this, very much from an information knowledge building point of view. So Lauren will take us through the information, and then we will have questions and answers at the end. Feel free to stick your questions and answers in the chat box, or just hold on to them, or put your hand up as we're kind of approaching the end of the session, and we will take questions from the floor. Over to you,
Hi.
Lauren.
Thank you, Julie. Hello, everyone. Really happy to be here today. Just for a quick presentation. So I'm the co-founder of Smappen. It's a territory mapping software built for franchisors, and we operate mainly in Europe and the US. We now have more than 1,000 customers, and I'll try to give you some insights today and to help you to um, to design your territory. So I'll share my screen. I've prepared a presentation. I'll start the sharing. Right. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay. Perfect then. All right. So, yeah, how you set up your franchise territory is really critical for your franchise. So it's one of the parameters that will really shape your franchise for the coming years. So if your territories are too big, you'll jeopardize your growth. They're too small, your franchises won't be successful. So, and this is just one of the many things that can be wrong. So, for me, the most important thing is that franchising is about duplicating success and know-how, and designing territories, I think, is part of your know-how, and it is at the heart of your franchise model. So there's no one size fits all rules here. Every business has its own specificities, but there are a few principles you can apply. So my goal today is to provide all methods and tools for you to maximize your franchise's success and your network growth. Uh, all right. So for the agenda, we'll cover just some basics about the territories, why I think it's important to define territories, what is a good timing, and how you can define them, and then could be also interesting to see how you can find interesting new promising territories. So about the territories, so just to make sure we're on the same page in terms of vocabulary. A franchise territory refers to a specific area or region within which a franchisee is granted the exclusive or partially exclusive right to operate. There are many different kinds of exclusivity combinations, exclusivity for opening new locations, marketing, leads attribution, etc. It's not the topic today, so but just remind, franchise territory is the area within which you agree on a specific rules for your franchises. Now, the catchment area or trade area, this is mainly used for fixed location businesses. It refers to the area where your customers are coming from. So, for instance, the catchment area for a restaurant could be 10 minutes drive time around the restaurant. Okay, it's where most of your customers are coming from. The catchment areas are helpful to understand the customer behavior, and they're useful to define the territories. The service areas are relevant for mobile businesses. So if you're servicing your customers, it's the area where the franchisee will be able to service its customers. So, for instance, if you're a home care service franchise, you will choose to provide your services within a 10 driven miles radius from any location, for instance, to avoid high operating costs related to travels. So service areas are generally defined by the franchisor, and often they correlate most of the time with franchise territories when exclusivity is granted. And this will be useful later on to define to design your territories. So why I think it's useful to define the exclusive territory, because not all franchisors award territories, but it provides some advantages. So I think it secures candidates. So franchisees make a significant investment to join a franchise. So having an exclusive or protected territory provides them a level of security. So I think it's an important factor in their franchise choice. It will help you also ensure an optimal coverage. Um, Designing franchise territories helps maximizing the coverage and avoid white spaces. So you should try to avoid to have unserved customers, but you won't necessarily be able to have 100% coverage of the country. Just some territories just don't have enough potential to justify investing in a new location. It can help prevent conflicts if you don't have clearly defined exclusive territories. Uh, it can be a ground for disputes, and it can avoid also cannibalization, which results from overlapping catchment or service areas, and it leads to underperformance for sure. Um, Bonus, I think, also can be useful to assign leads on online sales. If you generate leads or have online sales and you want to allocate them to your franchises, it's also convenient to use your franchise territories to assign them to your franchises. Now the timing. Uh, Territories can be designed at different stages of your franchise sales process. Okay, so to know the best time, it will mainly depend on the stage of growth your franchise is in. So first approach is the opportunistic approach. So emerging franchisors usually start by defining their franchise territories whenever they define a new franchises. It's a good starting point. Okay, especially if you're early stage, you often don't have well-established track record, and your definition of your territory design criteria is still evolving. Okay, it leaves room for learning and improvement. Uh, Typically, the initial territories will tend to be, I would say, generously sized, and over time, as the franchisor gains experience and confidence, they can fine-tune the new territories to their optimal size. It has some drawbacks. It means that you don't have a clear plan. Okay, you expand according to opportunities. Um, you may have logistics optimization issues with the territories spread out all over the place, which is not optimal. You may have also issues of territory oversizing, often driven by candidate demands, and it's sometimes challenging to refuse it. Oversized territories are untapped potential, meaning that sometimes you have just one franchisee where you could have two or maybe three. Another risk of opportunistic development is the creation of white spaces. Uh, my opinion, I prefer, I think it's interesting, especially at the beginning, to involve franchises in finalizing their territories because they have knowledge of the local area and the market. And you, as a franchisor, you know the metrics, but the combination of the two helps optimizing the design of the territory. It doesn't mean you must be unprepared to this. You must have at least a first draft of a territory before starting to discuss this with the potential franchisee. The second way timing, second way to do this is to do it upfront. Okay, is to plan a few steps ahead, define franchise territories proactively, even before you have candidate for these areas. So it's a different mindset. It means that you will initiate a development strategy. You will assess and prioritize your next steps. So instead of opening everywhere, you will plan the regions you'll target first, and you'll build your development plan. So it has some advantages. You will optimize your operations, so you can prioritize new locations to have multiple franchises in a specific area, such as you can have a centralized storage facility, for instance. You can optimize network management. Your franchise business consultants visit franchises, so they'll save time if the franchises are close by in the same region. I personally don't recommend mapping out the whole country, at least not in the beginning, for a few reasons. First, you learn a lot along the way, so I don't think you can define your success criteria perfectly right at the first time, and they will evolve over time. Your positioning, your products or services may change, and it will impact your success criteria and territory size. And also, your brand awareness will grow, hopefully. So, franchisee will achieve a better market penetration over time because your brand awareness will grow. So, it will make territories viable with maybe less initial potential. So it will change over time. So I think it's interesting to plan ahead, especially if you want to target large cities. You don't want to create a territory for someone and leave a small part that's too small to be awarded later on. Uh, I think you don't need to map the whole country. Planning a few steps ahead, I think, is a good idea. Now, how you define the territories? So you need to define your success criteria to size your territories. So first step is to select the existing locations you look at to define your success criteria. It can be all of them. Um, you should choose at least locations that are successful for sure, but also those that are less successful because they also provide very valuable insights. So don't choose only the overperforming locations. They're probably not representative of the entire network. And when you've picked your location, then you can start working on it. First step would be to know to define your typical influence area. So it will be either catchment area if you're a fixed or a service area if you're a mobile business. For fixed location businesses, you will need to know your typical catchment area. So it will show you how far your customers are generally coming from. Uh, it's a great indication to know to define the maximum size of your territory. Above this limit, your location won't be able to have a significant market penetration. And for mobile businesses, you look at your typical service area because farther than that, operating costs would be too high above a certain distance, for instance. So to define your typical catchment area, if you're a fixed location business, it's generally defined as the travel time area within which 80% are your customers are. Okay, so to estimate these different possibilities, the best is if you have customer data with addresses or postcodes, you'll be able to really accurately evaluate your typical catchment area. So you take your reference locations, then you map the customers, and you draw travel time that contains 80%, sorry, of your customers for each of these locations. Okay, the drive time that contains 80% of your customers is the location's catchment area. So for instance, if a 20-minute drive time around the shop contains 80% of a location's customers database, then 20 minutes drive time is the catchment area for this location. You do this analysis for your reference locations and keep the average. This is your typical catchment area. Okay. If you don't have customer location data, what you can do is do a survey to your customers and ask them about their mobility, like how much time they spend traveling to reach your store, and by what means did they come by car, on foot, etc. And you can use this to define your typical catchment area. For your service area, if you're a mobile business, you need to define it's a trade-off. So you need to define the maximum distance or drive time you want to service that is necessary to ensure minimal margins on profitability. Distances we will generate operating costs related to the time spent on traveling, fuel, vehicle maintenance, etc. Um, so it's up to you to define the trade-offs and to know like how far you can afford to service customers. And then it's time to define your success criteria that will guarantee the replicability of the concept within a territory. So these criteria are indicators that will allow evaluating the market potential in the area and size the territory accordingly. So they're mainly related to your target audience. So first step is of course define your ICP. You all know it already, and identify the metrics you have to look at to define your design criteria. So uh, if you're in B2B, for instance, it can be the number of target businesses. If you're in B2C, it can be the age, revenue, family size, etc. So for customer data, if you have customer data, you can use it to define your success criteria, analyze it to find uh, the the characteristics of your typical customers. Or you can also analyze your existing territories if you don't have detailed customer data, like what's the demographics within my existing territories who are already performing well, for instance. And then once you know which metrics you want to look at, then you need to quantify them. Here, the objective is to define what is the minimum value for your different metrics to ensure that a territory is viable. So you can look at successful locations. Okay, your successful locations will tell you which values are acceptable to define a viable territory. It will set some reference, but not necessarily the minimum value, because a franchisee can be successful with an oversized territory. So it means that if we have this amount of people, or we know it works. Okay. You can also look at less successful locations because you can learn from them also. If you have any, they will tell you which metrics values may put your location in a danger zone. Okay. So example of quantified key success factors could be I need a minimum of 20,000 women aged between 20 and 45 with a median household income above 40,000 pounds. Or for B2B, I need a minimum of 100 primary schools in the territory, depending on your target and your business. You can also use also other criteria that could be interesting. Some other factors like brands who have a similar target than yours can be interesting neighbors who have around. So it could be interesting to locate them. Uh, they're the ones who have a similar target and also are known enough to attract a flow of potential customers close to your future business. So they can be also part of your success criteria. Or you can have prescribers or referrers, businesses that can recommend your products or services. Could be a good thing to have them around. They could be also an interesting indicator of the potential of the territory. And of course, competitors. Then you need also to define the geography you want to use for your territories. Um, some people I've seen use distance radius like circles. Okay, Maybe it's easy, but maybe not the most relevant. The issue is that circles don't fit really well together. So you have either white spaces between your territories, leaving potential customers unserved, or overlapping territories. I've seen also people manually drawing territories. Um, can create ambiguous boundaries that can only be described on a map. So not the easiest way to not the best to put in a contract. Drive time or driven distance area, not necessarily the best suited for a franchise agreement because it's difficult to define a territory as an area covering 15 minutes drive time starting from this address. It can leave space to interpretations. So I strongly recommend that. I mean, most of franchisors use this, not all of them, but administrative boundaries, typically most of the time postcodes. And from a legal perspective, it's the easiest way to map out and put in a contract a clear territory. You just need to list them in the contract. So no room for interpretation and that's what most franchisors use today. Um, and also it's like a puzzle you can play with. So it's very easy to define scenarios and iterate to size your territories. So clearly, I highly recommend to use postcodes to design the territories, and also it makes like things easy if you want to target local marketing or to assign leads to franchises. It's very easy to use the postcodes. No, when it comes to really starting to design your territories, now you've got all you need to do that. Using your selected geography or postcodes, you can draw a first draft and then iterate to find the optimal territory for a new franchisee. So the guidelines are the following. Minimum size. Each territory needs to offer enough potential for the franchisee to succeed. So if a territory is undersized, the franchisee will face a risk of failure. So that's when your quantified key success factors will be useful. So the minimum size for a territory is the smallest territory you can draw that complies with your key success factors. Now for the maximum size, if the territory doesn't reach your minimum key success factors, you could be tempted to compensate and increase the size of the territory. So a larger territory will have greater potential, but it can also conceal additional costs or impacts. So your typical catchment area or service area will help you set the limit and avoid sizing a territory above the reachable market. So for fixed location businesses outside of your catchment area, chances are high that potential customers just will never make the trip to come to your restaurant or shop. So the franchisee will have a very low market penetration outside of your typical catchment area, and you're wasting revenue potential. And for mobile businesses outside of your maximum serviceable area, you will have high operating costs. It's not probably not worth servicing. So at the very beginning, it's okay to slightly oversize your territories. I'd say it's better to oversize than undersize the territories. Starting with territories that are too large has less impact than on your franchise than starting with territories that are too small. Because the most important thing no, I'd say at the beginning, but all the time is to ensure your franchise's success. So that's the most important thing. Then also what you can do at first, because at the beginning, if you are at the very beginning, it looks like you could go anywhere. It can be challenging to find where to start first. So a few things you can do to quickly identify the most promising territories is to look at the distribution of your success factors using a heat map. So where your key success factors have the most density or are the highest is where you need to start. So it's very handy to just define your key success criteria, put it on a heat map. They are great to visualize your success factors and see where you need to start first. But you can also look at other different things, uh, competitors. If there's no competitor in a market, there's probably no market. The opposite is true. If there's a market, there should be competitors around. So map them to identify interesting areas, especially of course, well-performing competitors. You need to identify the best competing brands and see where they are. And also, we talked about it before as key success factors, but locating mirroring brands is also very interesting. Probably know some brands that have a similar target, similar ICP, but they're not direct competitors. They target the same profiles, but they offer different products or services than yours. So if the presence of these brands is very good indicator that your target, your ICP is around. And having them around also might generate some traffic that you can benefit from because they will visit these other shops or restaurants around. So it's also a very good indicator that these are interesting areas. A few mistakes you can make. There, there's even more than that, but these are, I would say, the most common ones. Of course, ignoring existing locations could could seem obvious, but I've seen franchises who don't use mapping. They just have a list of postcodes. They don't have a way to visualize it. So be careful to avoid any risk of cannibalization by carefully mapping all your existing locations. Not taking also ground reality into account. Uh, there are local habits or I mean terrain reality, rivers, natural barriers that can be important to take into account for your territories. Don't try to take them into account also. Uh, Avoid also to create unbalanced territory. Always aim. I recommend to try to design balanced territory, providing all franchises um, with a playground for a successful launch and development. And also, if your territories are unbalanced, it can lead to disputes with franchisee who could feel that their deal was maybe unfair compared to other franchises. Uh, Try also not to sacrifice future locations to close a deal. Sometimes extending a territory will compromise the viability of another territory that is close by. So avoid closing a deal that may result in losing another one. And maybe my last advice would be also don't put too much pressure on it. Don't look for perfection. You probably won't achieve 100% coverage of the country. There are some areas that are just not worth the investment and operational cost, so that's okay. And anyway, you will learn. You will learn on the way, and you need to learn because, like I said at the beginning, it's really part of your know-how and at the heart of your franchise system, I think. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Lauren, would like to just take that down and then we'll just have everyone on the Zoom because at the moment
Yeah.
I've got a Zoom that says questions and we can hopefully see everyone's smiling faces as well. That would be great. Thank you very much. So Simon and I have been talking in the offline chat box about well, Simon brought up the heat map concept and target marketing. So Simon, I'll let you ask your question first, and then we can come
Great.
back.
No. Thank you for that. I guess I like the idea of the heat map. I said when I bought a franchise, it was all done by postcode, but it was a sort of a ring binder with loads of black and white maps on it. And I think to get that sort of perspective, particularly as a prospective franchisee with a heat map, it's very visual, isn't it? And it allows you direct resources and marketing, for example, in this day and age where we can be so targeted with pinpoint accuracy with your web advertising and socials. I think that's a really useful way of presenting it, and dare I say it will be a very useful tool in the armory of the franchise recruiter as well, because it then brings everything to life and makes it a bit more tangible in terms of, you know, when a franchisee is looking at a specific territory.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about just mapping can also be very useful also for to optimize operations and marketing, and so there's a lot more to do than just territory design, actually.
Yeah. Can I just, so it just leads me on to another question here, and I guess for yourself and also Julie as well. When you're working with a new franchisor who's looking at potentially franchising their business, and I know, Julie, you do a lot of work around financial modeling and making sure it's a viable plan. At what point do you bring in the territory mapping and planning? Is that important to you as a consultant, if you are going to give them some advice around financial modeling? Do you like to see that in at an early stage?
Yeah, absolutely. The model obviously has got to be balanced in all areas. So it's the financial model, the operational model, and the territory. So we start off with the financial model, which is based upon the core business developed by the client, and it can sometimes be an average, it can sometimes be an ABC site, whatever, basically. But ultimately, the territory that's allocated to each individual franchisee either has to match the financial model, or the financial model has to be adapted. So if it's a smaller area, because they're in the Lake District and there's a limited amount of houses or whatever it is in the Lake District, that's a kind of service, the financial model has to be adapted to match that. Otherwise, from the franchisor's point of view, there are obviously issues in terms of liability, etc. So yeah, it's all got to be balanced up. And again, from our point of view, in terms of working with Lauren, it's making sure that that's all put in right at the beginning, so that the territories that come out match the financial model to some degree, basically.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense. Yeah. Finally, obviously, as franchising and when we're looking at recruiting franchisees, we have the franchisee avatar in mind. Do we have in the same way, do we look at the customer avatar as well, in terms of how we use that information, that data, to map the territories? Is that something you use, Laurent, in your approach to territory mapping? You look at defining the customer avatar as well?
Like I said, you need to know your customer avatar to know your success criteria, to define your key success criteria, and you will look for them to size your territories accordingly. So yeah, yes. But some people also, another usage, when you know also your potential franchisee avatar, you can also use mapping to look for franchises in territories, in promising territories. You first identify promising territories, and then you look for potential franchises, looking for, I'd say, independent small businesses that could be interested in franchising.
So you're saying it can be used also in the conversion process as well. If your strategy is recruitment through conversion, you can identify similar businesses that are operating in the area as well. That's really interesting.
We do have franchisors who first target define their target territories, and then look for franchises within these territories and do outreach to them.
Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think from your point of view, it's not Mash, who's on his way down to London, so he's not on the call today, uses Smappen kind of the most within our business in terms of when we're working with clients at the early stages. It's looking at the territories that they currently cover and the characteristics of those territories. But in terms of then, if you like, farming the information, there's a whole host of data information that's contained within the system, whereby you can look at competitors, you can get your profile, you can put your data in from your existing customer base, and and again links into marketing, both for franchisees and for the service as well. Chris, I don't know if you've got any comments to make on that.
We're enjoying using Smappen for that purpose now. It's a feature that the team have added fairly recently, I think. But we were able to look within the territory boundary for a franchisee, for any particular franchise within their territory boundary for allied businesses, third parties they might be interested in working with. So we very quickly search for all the carpet cleaners within a territory and contact them and say, would you like to tie up? We've got domestic clients, you've got domestic clients, let's see what we can do together. And I think you've added recently, Lauren, haven't you, the an email functionality in that lookup?
No, not yet. Right now we have phone numbers, emails are, and we're working it.
Emails are coming. Okay,
yeah.
Right. But yeah, we can look competitors up, but we can also look at, as I say, similar businesses. And if we're targeting hotels or something like that, we can look up all the hotels. So from a marketing perspective for the franchisee, it's an incredibly powerful tool.
In data from Companies House as well, for example. So if you're looking at businesses, you can then draw down and extrapolate their financial results or get access to their financial performance data as well.
No, we don't have that kind of information. Love to, but
I think, Simon, there was a point that was made earlier on in terms of disputes between franchisees, which is very interesting. So Simon, for the benefit of people on the call, as well as doing the great work that he does in recruitment, has also recently qualified as a mediator and focused on franchise mediation, and did an event earlier on in the week with Harvey about mediation. And one of the things that came out of that, which again I'd never thought about, was mediation between franchisees. So potentially, I guess, disputes regarding territories could be one of the reasons that franchisees would need mediation.
No, absolutely. And I think, again, just drawing on my experience as a franchisee, I mean, I enjoyed a very good relationship with the franchisees around me, but if ever we had a sticky moment, it was usually to do with territories. It was due to territory, either where a driver was living or where a customer was based. So it's very relevant. And as I said, if there is a dispute or a disagreement, it is invariably linked to territorial problems. Again, that's just in my experience as a franchisee.
Yeah, and I think, again, in terms of just general, information knowledge development, that's where the territories has to mirror very carefully and closely what's in the agreement, or the agreement has to mirror what territory allocation actually is.
Yes.
So again, it's the financial model, it's the operational model, it's the agreement, it's the manuals, it's the territory analysis. They've all got to work and back each other and not get variation.
I mean, that's a good point, isn't it? Particularly talking about the agreement, because a lot of agreements will have minimum performance clauses in there, and that's got to relate, So, I mean, that's a great starting point, isn't it? When you're looking at mapping your territories out as well, is, within the agreement, there is a minimum performance criteria, and you've got to make sure that the territory meets those requirements. I would suggest as a really good starting point.
Yeah, and potentially the opportunity, the ability through the agreement to reduce the territory size in the event that the franchisee is not maximising the territory that's been allocated, particularly obviously in the early stages. And again, going back to a First Friday that we had a while ago with Revive, I think they do it very well in their agreements, and they also do it very well operationally, that it's also part of their business planning process. So people are aware at very early stage, if they're not maximising the territory, then it potentially can and will be reduced.
Yeah, that's when during renewals, contract renewals, it's very interesting to analyze customer data if you have some, to see, I mean, the real penetration rates within a given territory, to make sure that the franchisee, I mean, is really optimizing the potential of the territory, and if not, why not reduce the size of the territory then?
Yeah, if it's not being used, because if it's not being used directly by the company, my view is it just enables and allows a competitor to get in there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it also helps as well. And again, this is something that I experience, particularly where a friend, if you've got that analysis and that data, it gives you the opportunity to decide whether you can open up another location within your territory as well. And like you said, by doing that, you're making sure that not only are you maximizing the opportunity within the territory, but you're also, aware of the fact that if you don't do it, one of your competitors is going to come and do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Julie, could I ask a question to
Yeah,
you?
of course you can, Georgina, jump in. So Georgina and I were on a call this morning, and Georgina's hastily jumped onto this call because she's interested in obviously franchising and the topic of territories.
Yeah. So I'm just on the brink of sort of deciding whether or not to move forward. Very frightening phase of business, but exhilarating at the same time as well. So, as the franchise company, advising someone like myself, is that what you help them with? Is carving out those territories?
We help with all aspects, Georgina. So the territories is one part. If we look at it in terms of what we do, everything we've talked about on this call today is about the modelling stage.
Yeah.
So it's about redefining the business model that you currently operate to how it will operate as the franchise model, and really thinking, planning every aspect of it, including the operations, the finances, the territories, the roles and responsibilities, and then all of that eventually links through into what goes into the manual, what goes into the agreement, what goes into the prospectus, what goes into the recruitment strategy. So it's all, people will come and say, I need a franchise agreement. And, my first question is always, well, what's going to go in it, basically, because it doesn't just jump out of the air. And it's all part of that planning. And it's like, I always say, it's like building a jigsaw without knowing what the picture looks like.
Yeah.
You're trying to model it and put it together. It's only when it's finished that you hopefully see the picture in its place and it works. And again, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, when we first do modelling, it doesn't work. So we have to readjust if we can, and potentially look at areas within the business itself that can be tweaked, amended, changed to get it to stack up and make sense, basically.
Yeah, because as I said to you on that call this morning, my business is online tutoring in the field of dyslexia. Some of it will be face-to-face, but predominantly it would be online. So I was interested to learn how. I hadn't really thought about territories. I kind of thought of a bit of a free-for-all. Obviously, see the dangers of that now. So wondered how you might try and operate territories over an online tuition type thing. Would you still think of doing that in a postcode sense, or is there other ways in which you could consider that?
Lauren, I don't know if you've got any examples of online services. I mean, as I said, we've worked extensively in the tuition sector, so obviously we've got a lot of experience and background in the area. Again, we will look at what your business does to reflect and model that.
I've seen both online services, both models. Most of them don't have territories, and some do, but most of them just don't have territories, and it's more, like you said, open. And so yeah, for online services, I think the majority of them don't have specific territories. It can work pretty well.
Yeah, sorry to interject there. It's a very interesting point, actually, because if you do run your business online, there are no natural boundaries for the web. And I don't want to go without boring everybody about European competition law and block exemption regulations. You cannot restrict people from other areas wanting to buy from a franchisee of their choice. I've seen a lot of online businesses. What they do is they rectify that problem by operating or having a front end booking system. So you manage the portal. So if somebody comes on and is looking for a tutor, for example, you can then proactively allocate that person to the franchisee you have in the location. So I think technology is the answer. There's a lot of really good sort of portals like Franscape, for example, that allow customers to come on, put their area in, and then the booking system will allocate the specific franchise to them. But it's a difficult one, because if you are operating your business online, as I said, both legally and also physically, there isn't a way of carving up territory. So you have to be proactive in managing that process, that booking process, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, George, what you can do is you can define marketing areas in terms of physical marketing. So if you've got someone in an area, you can say, this is your marketing area. And if they're going to go out and do things like, traditional marketing routes, leaflet distribution, networking events, physical things, that's their marketing area.
Yeah, true, yeah.
But yes, as Simon said, you can't restrict where people choose to buy their services from. So if they go online and then say, I really like the look of, working with Chris or Amy or Lauren or Ken, whatever, that's up to them to make that choice. But what you don't want really is you don't want someone sitting in Portsmouth spending, chunks of their marketing budget in Aberdeen, because why would you do that basically? So it's about trying to manage that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of things. I've just actually commissioned a portal to be built anyway for a slightly different purpose, but that's where any franchisees will get a premium listing on the portal. I've done anyway. It's going to be for all allied trades anyway, linked to that.
Yeah, and again, Georgine, from your point of view, if you want to jump on a call to talk about it through before you do anything, then we can do that and hopefully get you going in the right direction in terms of the development of that.
Well, that's a separate portal. That's just an advertising portal for all people linked to neurodivergent sort of sectors, really. Yeah.
Ken, sorry, can you had your hand up a while ago?
It was really just for Lauren more to do with the type of restrictions in terms of the data, now that can be passed across.
Passed across from.
Well, whether it's age, gender, whatever. I just wondered if there were many restrictions in terms of the level of detail you could go to in terms of demographics.
So the restrictions is the limitation is the available data we have in the British census. So we pull the data from the Office of National Statistics, and for demographics, that's all we have for UK.
Yeah.
Ken, did you mean restrictions or did you mean availability?
Restrictions.
In terms of stopping you using it?
Well, just in terms of, is there any information that isn't available?
Company's house data recorded from what's house, yeah. I'm sure lots. So sorry, Lauren, you said the source of the data is the census.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that in a way that answers it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I think it's broad data rather than personal data, isn't it? So
it's
anonymous.
Yeah. And it's public anyway. It's open public data, so there's no restriction in using it.
Yeah, but again, from our point of view, in terms of using it, so that's Smash that uses it. Some of the stuff that he's pulled out for some of our clients when we've been going through the development process has been really interesting and enlightening, and given a new dimension to how we can look at the whole kind of modelling work, which is great. So, Lauren, there was one question I was going to ask, which you talked about, which I'd never heard about, which is pie slicing cities.
Mm-hmm.
So can you kind of give us some bit more information, examples of that? Because I think it's a really interesting concept.
So it's it can be challenging, to divide cities into different territories. So when I talk about pie slicing, it's like you should try to avoid like giving the city center to a franchisee and then the part of the suburbs to another one, because the characteristics, the demographics will not be will be very different for one and another. So probably will be the dynamics and the potential. So the idea is more to try to divide it like a cake, like a pie.
Yeah.
So that each of your franchisee has part of the center and part of the suburbs to have the same, I would say, the same type of kind of population overall in the whole territory.
Okay, great. And my final point is London. I mean, when we start talking to people and modelling, and people ask about London, I always say, listen, just leave it. Just like put a big line around the M25 to begin with, and just leave it, because we'll come back to that unless you're based in London. But London's always a challenge in terms of the very mixed demographics and the close proximity of that as well. So how kind of small, deep do you go in terms of London? And is it more challenging if you're based in, as an example, as we are in the northeast of England? Someone might have 6 sites in the northeast of England to take the data from that and try and map into London. Is that realistically, can you cross over with that?
It's more challenging because it's as there's more density, you will have more potentially more franchises within the that space, but you can have the same approach that you you would have anywhere else. Sorry, just need to zoom in actually. The
Mm.
fact is that because there's more density, your territories will probably be much smaller. So you have a lot of you can design more, but I think it works the same. It works the same.
Chris, do you have any franchisees in London?
We do, and the territory definition, which was we brought to Smappen. In fact, we had another business look at designing our territories for us and working with us. And I was going to ask you, Lauren, whether you do that as a kind of project work, whether you help people design territories. But our experience in London, to answer your question, Julie, before Lauren answers that one, is that the territories are physically smaller. The definition is pretty much the same. What Lauren describes as success criteria is the same: 50,000 people with a disposable income greater than. So the criteria is the same. The challenge with London that we're finding is the marketing locally is more difficult. Search terms, cleaners in London is an easier search term and a cheaper one than cleaners in Camden or cleaners in Mayfair. So the local marketing is the challenge within the M25 because of that density of population. The territory's definition is not different.
Okay. And what about staff recruitment? Do you use Smappen for staff recruitment at all, Chris?
We haven't as yet, no. Again, that's digging down to personal data, I guess. Trying to find, target individuals,
Yeah.
targeted businesses using Smappen is, of course, is fair game.
Okay. And sorry, what was your question to?
So the question to Lauren was, do you do project work? I mean, you've talked about the theory of designing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
territories for people. Do you want them to come to you with that, this is what our
No, we
territory
don't.
looks
We
like, or do
don't.
you work with businesses on a consultancy basis?
No, we don't. We don't do that kind of work. We're
Okay.
just a software provider.
Right.
So we
Okay.
know how to do it. We try to help people to do it, but we don't do it.
Okay. All right. You know about it. You know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The principles.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Any further questions? Any comments? Georgina, are you happy that we've answered all the questions for today?
Yeah, it was just interesting actually listening to those conversations about demographics and stuff, because like from a tutoring perspective, we can charge a whole lot more in the southeast regions than we can up north, as you'll probably know if you're coming from that area. I live in Stoke-on-Trent, and
Yeah.
I couldn't charge what I charge to local people. So
Yeah.
that's making it interesting, me thinking now about territories and,
Well, again,
we do charge franchisees differently for different geographic regions.
yeah, you can't legally restrict pricing. It's anti-competitive. So you will find in most businesses, every business is, certainly in terms of franchises, Chris is an example in terms of cleaning services, that you will pay more for your cleaner in Kensington, Belgravia, Knightsbridge, whatever, than you might do in Stoke or Darlington or somewhere else, basically, and that's just market driven.
Yeah.
To some degree, and then there's also down to the success of the franchisee. So some franchisees can charge high prices because they're very good and very successful and have got the confidence to do that, basically. irrespective to some degree of the area. So yeah, there is price variation. Again, that's got to be managed through the system and the portal and by the franchisee as well.
Yeah, lots to think about.
Yeah, lots to think about. So, okay, to finish off our session for today, obviously just to confirm the details of Lauren, if anyone future sessions wants to look at Lauren's details, and then to talk about, on the left we've got the barcode, which is using the gather system that we use. If everyone's got time, 30 seconds to put their phone against the barcode and hopefully leave some feedback for today's session, and to come on to the next session in July, which I can't believe we're talking about July, which is actually on the second Friday, which is July the 11th, because Amy and I are both away on the first Friday. And our guest on the July 1st Friday is Nick Empson, who was with Little Kickers for many years, working with them from the UK and international. And it's basically the story of Little Kickers, and how he and Christine kind of took the business from a startup situation in the UK to what it is now, which is a cross-border international, very, very, very successful brand, engaging with lots of children to enable them to learn about football, but lots of other things as well. And it's a very successful and very worthwhile franchise. So we're delighted to have Nick with us next session in July. So finally, to thank